Oh, okay. Okay, so we're in now. So I'm here to talk to everyone here about full stack developers, unicorns, and all of these other like mythical creatures that we see in the job market. Because when you see like the kind of job that people are like trying to hire for, it feels like it's kind of impossible to find like a single person that fits all the different criteria. Because sometimes you're going to see like unless like you have like 30 years in your career, then you will like know Cabal, you're going to know Java, you're going to know C and all the different languages. But like for most people, it's not really possible to get to this kind of stuff. But there is a way we can try and make sense of what actually being a full stack developer means. So it's not as much magic as like we think, or as like recruiters are trying to hire for. There are full stack developers. There is a reason why they exist, and we're going to be talking about this on this presentation. So my name is Maurício Linhares. I work at knee.com, and you can find me on Twitter, and like everyone's going to get a link to the presentation so you can see other ways of contacting me. And I'm also a Microsoft developer, so I also do C#. So like if you ever start this group, like let me know. I'll be happy to go there as well, because a lot of people are not going to believe, and they like whenever you say, oh, you do C#, it's like, really? It's not that bad, people. It's not that bad. It's a nice language. So full stack developers weren't special a couple years ago. So if you go back, I don't know, 5, 6, 7, 8 years, being a full stack developer wasn't like really like different. It was just what we did. Like it was all about being full stack. Like we were all full stack developers. There was no difference. Like this wasn't even something that we would talk about. Like no one would ask, like, are you a full stack developer? No. Like this was just expected. You had to be a full stack developer. Like you just had to do all the pieces. That there was no choice. And like if you look at the stacks, this was kind of the stuff you would see. So like if you were on LAMP, like you would see like Linux, Apache, PHP, Python, Perl, JavaScript, MySQL. If you were like on Rails, you would see like that other stack. If you were on Microsoft, it would be Windows, ISS, ASP.NET, and C#. So all of these stacks were there. Like this wasn't special. Like could you build a web application like 5 years ago and not know like at least a little bit of JavaScript or database? No, like it was really hard. How are you going to store the data? How are you going to like make an AJAX call like from the browser? Like we all knew this, right? We were all like building web apps, and we all knew how to do this kind of stuff. This wasn't special. Like you just had like you slapped up some jQuery and you made calls, and like that was what we did, right? Back in the day, like no one would even say like it's JavaScript, it's jQuery. Like we were not like writing JavaScript. It's just like getting jQuery calls one after the other, and that's it. Like there was basically JavaScript development back then. Like you never saw a website that did not use jQuery. It was just the default. It was just available everywhere. So these stacks were there, and we were doing all the pieces. So you would write the application, you would like FTP or SSH, like the files to a server, right? We were all using like FTP. Those were sad times. But we were doing that. Like I remember that we were doing that, and we would ship stuff over FTP. It would connect to a database. It would do its job, and we all knew about database design in SQL, right? We were writing SQL. We were creating tables. We were creating indexes, and when queries were slow, we would go to the database and we would check. Oh, is there an index missing in here? Do I need like to change how this data is being stored? So every single developer was working on all the different pieces. Like you had to understand how the database works, right? You had to understand SQL, at least the basics. So we were all full stack developers back then. And it wasn't special. Like what, did people call you a full stack developer? Was it like in your job description? Like senior full stack developer? No, like it wasn't a thing. Like we didn't actually care that much about this stuff. So in the past, we were all full stack developers. But stuff like started to change. Like we just did all the pieces. And like JavaScript was still like a baby. We didn't write that much JavaScript. Like it was really tiny amounts of JavaScript, which was mostly like calling jQuery. So we're not actually building applications in JavaScript. And like if you were, like who here has used Rails? Okay, a bunch of people. So back in Rails, like you did not even have to know JavaScript because you could use like that really amazing thing that was called RJS. I could use RJS here. Good times, right? You just like, you slap a link and you say, oh, make this call and insert this HTML. So RJS was just a really simple way of getting JavaScript into your app, not writing a single line of JavaScript. It just did all the work for you. Like you make a call, like when you see, well, like if any of you have seen like turbo links, this new feature that's in Rails, turbo links is RJS. There's no difference. It's the same thing. You make a call, it renders the HTML and inserts the HTML into your page. Like it's exactly the same idea, but now with a different name, so it looks cooler. But like, it's still like trying to prevent people from writing JavaScript. Because back then, like, we had like really small amounts of JavaScript in the applications. And MongoDB did not exist. This was possibly the happiest time of my life because I did not have to handle MongoDB. Like really. Like now, whenever I remember MongoDB, I go straight back to Cthulhu and I think like, yes, we have called the ancient gods. Like, it's just a thing. So, but like, as much as I love to bash MongoDB, the problem is not like MongoDB. It's that we're using databases that are not relational. They're not based on SQL. So it's not like, sometimes as much as like going from MySQL to Postgres is not exactly like easy, most of the main ideas of database design are in there. So you're still creating tables, you're still creating indexes, and Postgres is a much better database. I'm sorry if there are any MySQL lovers in here. Like Postgres is like really so much better. But like you could transfer a lot of your knowledge from one database to the other. But when MongoDB and the other NoSQL databases arrive, what happens is that we can't transfer our knowledge like between like relational databases to them anymore. So this is where like trouble starts to show up. So yeah, life was much easier back then. Like so long ago, like 5 years ago. We're all old. And like, but was it really that easy? So what's the difference between then and now? So like we have this, right? So some of the knowledge that we had, like between tools, you could transfer from one to the other, like SQL. And SQL, database modeling, Linux management, it's kind of still the same. Like, is anyone here using Docker? Like, so few people using Docker. So like you're still, most of us are still like running either on our like old Windows servers or in our old Linux servers. It's still the same. Like you're still running Ubuntu, you're still running like CentOS or like Red Hat or whatever you're using. So the knowledge that you had on that platform like is still available for you today. So some of the knowledge like between the tools that we used in the past was transferable. But like when you go like between programming languages and like programming environments, going from one to the other is not that easy. It's not that transferable. If you're going like from PHP to Ruby, as much as people are going to say, oh, it's all dynamic languages, it's all the same, it's not. If you look at PHP code, the way people build applications on PHP and the way people build applications with Ruby, or if you like go C#, you go Scala, it's completely different. It's really different to transfer. You can transfer the basics of the knowledge of programming, but like the environment, the libraries that you use, the way people build applications, no, it's not that easy to transfer that kind of stuff. So if you wanted to go from PHP to Ruby, you had to learn a new language. And it wasn't easy. Like back then, it wasn't easy. Nowadays, it's not easy, right? It's still not easy to go like from one language to the other. So what did really change? JavaScript is not jQuery. Like now we know that there's a thing called JavaScript. Like it's not like jQuery is not a language. The language is JavaScript, and that's the kind of stuff that we're using. So instead of just using or trying to hide from JavaScript as we were doing like on Rails apps back then, we actually have to know JavaScript and build stuff with JavaScript nowadays. Relational databases are not like the default. And this is something that for me, it's like I'm going through the pains of a decision of not using a relational database, and I can still like blame the people that made the decision because they're not in the company anymore. So like it's like I can blame them. Like they're not there, so I can just say, yeah, it's because of those guys, not because of me. But one of the problems is that now we have many different options. It's not like you can just say, oh, I'm just going to use MySQL or Postgres because these are the databases that are available. No, there are many databases available. They're all different, and they have upsides and downsides. So now you have to understand all of these different databases. And it's important for us to remember, like, you weren't born knowing SQL, right? I assume no one here was born knowing SQL, right? That's a fair assumption, right? So we had to learn it, but then we just assume, oh, but it was in the past, so I don't have to care about it anymore. But there are new tools available. There are other databases available, so we have to learn them as well. So you just have to decide, like, what's my stack going to look like? The same way that you have invested your time into learning SQL, into learning relational databases, you have to invest your time into learning the new tools. The new databases, if they make sense for the kind of application that you're building, then yes, you have to invest time and learn how this stuff works. Because that's how it works in the business, right? There's something new, that's something that's better, that's going to improve the way you're building your apps, and you invest some time into learning how it works. Just how you have invested your time learning SQL, like you might not remember how you got to learn SQL, but yes, you had to learn it. You had to invest your time actually learning SQL. And you can't FTP your site anymore. And that's good, right? No one here is FTPing anymore, right? Or if you are, please raise your hand. No one is going to raise their hand saying I'm using FTP. It's over SSH now, right? So it's not FTP. Yeah, you just do the same, but you do it over SSH. Oh, that's awesome. That's really cool. I guess I was still using FTP, I don't know, 6 years ago or something like this. Yeah. It wasn't pretty. And we didn't really know all of this stuff back then. This is an important reminder for all of us. We had to learn all of the different tools that we were using back then. We invested our time learning languages, learning tools, learning about Apache, learning about Nginx, learning about the frameworks we were using. And as much as it looks like there's a lot of different stuff to know, back then we had to do the same. We had to learn at least one language. We had to know about the web server that we were running. We had to know about the operating system that we were running our stuff. So we had to invest our time into learning this stuff, but we did not have to know every single piece. If you were happy doing PHP stuff, there was no reason for you to be switching to Ruby just because you wanted to switch to Ruby. So you just continue to use PHP. It wasn't something that there was no requirement for you to just jump from one language to the other unless you wanted to learn a new language. So that's kind of the same thing that's happening right now. You don't have to learn all of the, 100 JavaScript frameworks that are available. You can just decide, I'm going to pick one, I'm going to learn this one, and I'm going to do my job using this one. If it works and you assume it looks nice to you, then you use it. That's how we did it in the past. It's exactly the same idea. As much as it looks there's so many different things to use, yes, but you don't have to know them all. No one is asking you, other than the recruiters on LinkedIn, no one else is asking you to know all of these different things. And at your actual job, you're not going to use them all. It's not going to happen. You're not going to get into a company and you're going to write apps in 10 different languages because no company is insane enough. Maybe there's a company that's going to do something like this, but it's not a good idea. 10 different languages? No, please. You don't want to do something like this. It's probably not going to work. And yeah, unless you're looking for a job and then you have to be a Picazard because that's the only way to get hired right now, I guess. You just have all of these different tools under your tool belt, and you say you have like 20 years of experience doing Rails and 30 years of experience like doing Java or something like this, and then that's how people are looking for. But like, if we ignore, like, what does it mean to be a full stack developer right now? So the thing is, we want people that know like a bunch of stuff, but know one thing really well. Like, this is going to be, especially if you're building apps, like if you're not like in some like research stuff or in a college or something like this. Most of the stuff that we want, like most of the time when we're hiring someone, we want someone that knows like a bunch of a lot of stuff, but is really good at one specific thing. Like this is most of the time what we are looking for when we are hiring. But so you are building your app, like you're working on the back end, it's Golang, you're really happy about the kind of stuff that you're doing, but you should be ready to jump to the front end if needed. Because sometimes we just don't have time to hire someone else. We don't have time, or we don't have the money to hire someone else into the company. And like to do all the training and get them up to speed. So someone in the team will just have like to make the jump. And this is not unexpected. I think everyone here has seen this happen, where you just have like to switch from one tool to the other because like we don't have enough time to actually get stuff done. And why? Because the very first thing, this is like one of the most like amazing things for me when I went from backend developer to all the other stuff that I had to do. It gives you perspective. It gives you perspective because you're not in your silo anymore. Now you have to interact with people that are outside the stuff that you're doing. You have to look around, you have to understand what's going on, and this is like really important. Like you have built an API and you provide it to someone else and you're like, yeah, that's cool, but is it really cool if you're not calling it? You don't know. You're not the customer. Until you become the customer, you have no idea if your API is good or not. And like jumping to the other side and actually using the API is going to show you how horrible your API is. It's a pain in the ass. You know, it's big trouble to call it. Like it's a really big problem for you, for everyone else using it, but you don't know because you're hidden. You're behind the API. You just get like a card on Jira or on GitHub. You work on it, you provide the API, and that's it. You don't care about what's happening on the other side. And like when you jump to the other side and you go to the front end and you see like all the calls being made, then you get to know. And this kind of perspective like is really, really amazing in development. For you to understand how people are consuming the stuff you're building. And this is not just for customers. It's also like for the other teams in the company that depend on the work that you're doing. Like this is really important like inside the company itself. It's not just like for people that are using the application and like you're not like maybe you're not using the application that you're building like yourself all day long, but like even in the sense that other people are calling your code and this is going to affect them. And if you don't have this kind of perspective, then you're missing a lot of the knowledge of how the application is really doing its job. And it causes pain. Like pain like is the only thing that's going to move someone. It's the only thing that's going to move a developer to fix an issue. Is pain. Like if you're not on the on-call schedule of your app, you have no idea what's going on. You have no idea what's going on. Like if you're not on the on-call schedule, you're just like writing code and you're making like you're building a page that makes like 5 database requests for every object that it shows, and you don't care because it never rings your phone overnight, right? You don't care. So if it's not causing you pain, you're not going to fix it. And this is really important. And this is the direction that most companies are moving right now. So there's not going to be an ops team separated from you. They're going to deploy and maintain your application. No, it's your team that's going to get the application, get it in the cloud, and get it running. And it's you that's going to be paid. So if this is not happening to you right now, it's going to happen in the future. So you better get ready for this kind of stuff. So this is going to show you if really the code that you wrote is reliable. Is it reliable? Is it scalable? Is it running correctly in the environment? Like, is it like causing pain to customers? Is it a problem to deploy the code because the code has a lot of dependencies that are just unknown? And if you're not involved in this process, then you just don't understand. So this is another really important part of like being a full stack developer, because you're going to see the pain that the other people are having to handle your application. This is going to be visible to you. And what are the pieces that are going to be involved like in here? Like if you want to be a full stack developer, what kind of stuff is there for you to look around and learn? So first there's like the backend systems, which is like probably still where most people are working on. There's the front-end system, so you will have like the JavaScript applications, the HTML, like depending on the kind of app that you're building. There are the mobile systems. Like most of the time, mobile systems are not built with HTML and JavaScript. You have to use like one of the native languages for the environment that you're running. There's the infrastructure, so you have all the ops work that needs to be done for your application to actually run in the cloud. There's optimization and scaling. That's like learning how your application is running and how you can improve, how you can measure the stuff that's happening in the application. And there's UX design, how people interact with your application. Like, are customers happy? Are the features that you're building like really functional? Do they really work for the customer? This is something that, as much as developers don't like to think about this, like, is the customer that pays your salary, in case you didn't notice? You know, like if customers don't buy the product, then the company doesn't get the money and the company doesn't have money to pay your salary. So it's important for people to remember this like kind of interesting part, like sometimes that, many times we just forget about it. So, oops, where's the image? Right here? So like, do you have to learn all of these different things? So no, you don't have to learn like all of the stuff that I'm listing here, but like you can try, you know? At least try. Give it a try. Try to be involved in other pieces or not your day-to-day work. Try to be involved in the other stuff that's happening in the company, in the other teams. So, just so that you understand how your decisions and the stuff that you're doing affects other people. And like being great at everything is hard. Like if you try to do something like this, it's hard because it's going to take a really long time and you might burn out, you might not be happy because you're like just having all your time invested on learning new stuff and learning different things. So it might not be ideal, but trying is really, really good. Like you're not going to be like amazing at all of that different pieces. Like you might, I don't know, maybe there's someone here that's really good in all the different pieces. But like at least trying or trying to be good in one or two of them, like it's going to make a huge difference in your career and like in your life, how you're going to interact with everyone else in the company. So in backend systems, like we have the many programming languages and platforms that you can learn. So like there's all the languages, there's the JVM, the CLR, like for .NET, there's OTP for Erlang, there's all the queuing and background job systems that you just have to learn. There's database optimization in the many different databases. If you're running MongoDB, you have to learn how MongoDB is optimized. If you're running on Cassandra, you have to learn how Cassandra is optimized. Like it's your job. If you're doing backend stuff, you're writing to a database and you don't understand how the database works, you're failing at backend development because this is your business. This is not the ops team business. The ops team does not understand how the application works. This is the backend developer job to work on. Like you have to understand caching solutions and you have to understand about scaling. Because again, you can only scale an application that was built to be scaled. So the ops team can't do magic. You can't expect that your ops team is just going to come in and, oh, we're going to use like now the biggest machine that's available on EC2 and this is scaling. This is not scaling. Right? This is not scaling. Like if you're doing front end, like you have to learn JavaScript. Like the language. I mean it. Like just use all of the cool stuff. And like as much as I hate JavaScript, like it's something that I use only when I'm forced to, like ES6 is really nice. It looks like a programming language now. So like when you're building stuff with ES6, you're like, yes, now I can actually write code and think and assume that this is a programming language. So it's really good. Like get one or more front-end frameworks. You don't have to know them all. Like right now, I have invested my time into learning React, and I did a little bit of Angular in the past. And for me, I think React works the way I expect a framework to work. So I'm happy using React. It's working for me, and I'm not going to learn them all because it's just like, it doesn't make sense for me to learn all the different ones. I'm just happy doing the ones that I know, and learn a little bit of user experience design. You're working on the front end. You are the last like frontier between the application and the customers. You need to understand at least a little bit of this. Like you can't just pretend that you're not like, that there's no one actually using the stuff that you're building. So please, at least try to understand a little bit of this. Like if you're working on mobile systems, there are many languages and SDKs. Some of them you can translate. Like if you know, like Java and Objective-C, if you bend your mind a little bit, Java and Objective-C, they kind of look the same. Like the SDK is kind of the same. The way the classes are organized are kind of the same. Swift is a little bit different, but still, like if you know OCaml, anyone here knows OCaml? No? Yeah, you know it's weird. Okay, so I'm the only person here that knows OCaml. But like Swift really comes from OCaml, so it looks like OCaml. So if you knew one, you would like understand the other. There's a lot of UI patterns that you have to care about when you're building stuff on mobile, and all of these UI patterns are specific to like the platform that you're using, so you have to learn that. You have to understand how communication and state management works in this stuff. So most of the time, if you're saving state, you might be saving state like using one of the specific solutions like for like the environment. Like if you're on iOS, you're probably using core data to save your stuff because that's what's provided by Apple. And there's also like the cross-platform tooling. So you could like use Unity, you could use like Xamarin or React Native or all the many different solutions to build mobile apps. So it's also good to have this kind of stuff in your tool belt if you want to go down the mobile systems path. And DevOps, like you need to know about cloud environments. You don't need to know them all. You just need to know the cloud environment where your company is running on right now. So if it's running on EC2, yes, you have to understand how EC2 works. The services that are available on EC2. How, like, if you pull a snapshot on EBS, it doesn't mean the data is available. It's going to pull the data from S3 and it's going to take forever. So you have to understand this kind of detail. You have to understand how stuff works in the cloud. So if you're into DevOps, this is the kind of stuff you have to know. You need to know like a configuration management tool. You don't need to know them all. Again, like pick the tool that your company is using or a tool like that makes you happy. So if you're a Ruby developer, Chef is easy because most of the stuff you're going to be doing is in Ruby. If you're a Python developer, then Ansible or Puppet are probably better because they use Python, so it's easier for you to handle.
Not Puppet from Python.
Oh, not Puppet?
No.
Oh, okay. Do they use a different language? Oh, Salt is Python? Okay. So you need to understand like server monitoring and management. So you have to, how to get the numbers to see like if you're running out of space in the disk, if you're using too much CPU, if your machines are swapping. So you need to understand this kind of stuff. And you need to do like scale planning and cost evaluation. This is like something that people forget, but if you're running stuff in the cloud, it doesn't mean it's free. So you don't want to run like more servers than needed because someone needs to pay the bill. So if you can make it spend less money, it's usually really good. And one thing, like, has anyone here read that book, Outliers? Outliers. So in Outliers, they're going to talk about like the 10K hours rule. So, but there's a thing, like now there's a book by the guy that actually wrote the research that's called Peak. And I would really recommend, like if you want to learn more about like learning stuff, Peak is an amazing book. It's from the guy that actually did the research that's spoken about in Outliers. But like 10K hours doing exactly the same thing are not the same as being really good at something. Because you're just doing the same thing. And what you're going to see, like if you get Peak, he's going to talk about this, deliberate practice. Deliberate practice is when you try to do something that's really hard, that's painful, that's complicated, that like at the first time you try, you can't do. This is the kind of stuff that actually, that we should actually be talking about when we're learning because it's hard. If it's not hard, then it's not worth it. You're not like improving if whatever you're doing or whatever you're learning is easy because it means you just know already. So you're not getting any better. So what you want to do when you're like trying to switch to something else, try to pick something that's hard for you. So if all you have done in your life is like is front-end development, go for DevOps. Like it's going to be completely different. Completely different from the stuff that you have been doing. So just pick something that's hard, that's going to make you like work a little bit harder, and this is the kind of stuff that's going to make you really improve. And switch. Like whenever you have the opportunity, switch to something else. Switch teams, switch technology stack, switch the application that you're working on. Like, and if the company does not allow you to do any of this, switch the company. Switch the company, seriously. Like if you don't have the option of doing something else, you have to always do exactly the same thing in the company. Like this is not like this is not for the company, it's for you. Can you imagine like if you have your life 10 years writing in the site? I have a friend that has been working like for 6 years now in the same Rails 2.3 app. Rails is 5 now. 5. He's working 6 years, Rails 2.3. Like when he leaves his current job, in his resume he's going to be, yeah, I have worked in exactly the same Rails 2.3 application for the past 6 years. That's like really good for hiring, right? A lot of experience in a framework that everyone is using right now, Rails 2.3, like completely different than Rails that's in right now. So this is not only for the company, it's for your career. You don't want to be stuck inside the same technology. It's not good for you. You're not going to grow in a place like this. So if you can't change anything, like if you have to be forced to always work in the same app, same language, same stack, same everything, just go somewhere else. Find a new job. Right? Don't wait for something like this to happen, because the company, if the company ever needs, they're going to fire you. Right? They're going to fire you. So fire the company before they fire you. And the more you learn, the more you transfer. Like once you learn, like any one of these tools, like if you learn React, if you learn Ember, if you learn Angular, there's going to be like stuff that you will be able to transfer from one framework to the other, because it's still JavaScript. It's still JavaScript. It's still UI. There's not a lot of magic that they can do that's going to make them like completely different from each other, just like learning a programming language. So if you know Scala and you ever have like to do Rust or OCaml or Haskell development, you're good, because a lot of the knowledge that you have grown in Scala is going to transfer to these languages, and the other way as well. So the more stuff you learn, the easier it's going to be for you to transfer like your knowledge from one place to the other. So just keep learning, keep doing stuff, and keep doing different stuff. And don't panic. Like this is not something that happens like overnight. And if the company, So Jervon, you correct me if I'm wrong at this, but like Comcast allows you to be for 6 months in a completely different team, right? So it takes time. That's the kind of stuff you want. You know, you want to be out in a different team for a while, like a couple of months, that you're going to learn the technology, you're going to learn the kind of stuff that they're building, and this is not going to be overnight. You're not going to learn this kind of stuff like in a week. So like you don't have to panic. You don't have to go crazy and, oh, I really have to learn all of this different stuff right now. No. Like you just go slowly. Take your time, but learn. Do something different. Do something that's going to be surprising to your brain. And another really important piece of being a full stack developer is being the bridge. So these guys are the connection between the teams. The full stack developers are the people that are going to connect like your backend team to your front-end team to your DevOps team, because they're going to see stuff going in all the different teams in all the different environments. So other than like doing the development and doing the work, the full stack developers are the people that are going to be going around the company and are going to make sure that everyone's decisions are working. And you can only do this if you are involved in the many different pieces. Like you can't like help the backend team and the ops team reach a decision if you don't understand like the problems that each side is having. So you have to be going around, you have to be floating around and doing this kind of stuff, doing this connection, and having empathy. This is like really important for developers. Like have empathy for everyone that's working. Right? We're not trying to fight each other. The ops team is not trying to shoot your application down with the new stuff. They want to run your application. You just have to help them run it. You can. It's not like there's not a wall and you throw the application over the wall and they throw it back to you. This is not supposed to be how we develop software, right? This is not supposed to be. As much as this happens, this is not how we're supposed to do it. And this is the kind of stuff that full stack developers should be working on. So they're working in the many different layers. They're working in the many different pieces of your applications and infrastructure. And they're probably like the best people to help all the teams reach this kind of decision. Because they are involved in all the different pieces and they see all the different stuff that's happening. And like at the end, it's just progress. It's just your career. Just like it was in the past, you had to learn the different stacks. You had to learn LAMP. You had to learn Ruby. And that it is what it is. If the kind of stuff that you're building is applications, you basically have to deal with this kind of stuff. You will have to deal with backend development. You have to deal with front-end development. You have to deal with ops. You have to deal with ops with mobile development. So it's just your career progressing. If this is not happening to you, it just means that your career is stuck because you're not learning new stuff. You're not doing new stuff. You're not like building on top of the stuff that you already have. So your career needs to continue to move forward, and for it to continue to move forward, you have to go somewhere. You have to learn something new, something that's not exactly what you're doing right now. And how did it happen to me? Like back when I got at Need like 3 years ago. I was just a backend developer. I had experience doing mobile development, and like my very first commits at the company were actually at our mobile app. And eventually I just like went full on to being a backend developer. And we needed more ops. Like we had 2 guys doing ops for a team. I guess we were like 15 developers. Was it like what it was back then? It was a lot of people. It was a lot of people doing development, and we had 2 people doing ops. That doesn't work, right? So it was either we do ops and help the ops team do the work, or we just sit and wait, and eventually our apps are going to be deployed to the cloud. And we didn't want to sit and wait, so we started getting into ops to help them get the job done. And like I had no chef experience. I never wrote any. Back then I had zero experience doing any kind of like development on ops, and I had never seen chef in my life, but I felt like it's Ruby, right? It's easy, supposedly. No, it's not. It took a while. It took a while for me to actually get there. But like the ops team, they provided guidance and feedback on the stuff that we were doing. So they knew we were helping them, so they were really helpful to make sure that whatever we were building was actually working for the description. So they provided feedback. They did like reviews for a pull request. They said like whenever I wanted to do something, I would come like to them. It was mostly like me like getting Rich to answer me all the time, and like I would just go in. I was like, so how do I do this? And he would just point me to documentation, point me to code examples, and eventually we made it. We made it, and I eventually just became one of the members of the ops team as well, doing other stuff and reviewing other people's work. So instead of like just having developers on one side and the ops team on the other side, we merged both teams. So we had people doing ops and doing the work together inside the company because we had a need, and it was either we going there and helping fixing it or just sitting and waiting, which wasn't ideal for the company or for anyone in there. And next, what happened was we had to rewrite an app. It was an ASP.NET app, and we wanted to move it to Rails so that we would remove the Windows dependency in our stack. And the app was like really fit for a front-end app, like a single-page application. And we just decided let's do this in React, and we built the app. It has a Rails backend, and the front end is all based on React. And Leo out there was the guy that helped me get this out of the way. And I basically my experience with JavaScript was jQuery, and we got into build a front-end app that works and is being used by our team in the company right now, and they're really happy about the final results. So it wasn't something that like so it wasn't something that I was planning myself due to the way I really love JavaScript, but we had to do it. I was like, well, this is going to be a great like chance for me to actually get down and build something that's serious in JavaScript, and we did it. And again, we had guidance, we had people helping, we had people doing reviews and helping us decide on what was the stuff that had to be done, and it made a huge difference to do this kind of stuff, to have people helping and to decide to use something else. And it was thankfully delivered on time, and it's behaving correctly right now in production. And so, am I a full stack developer? No. I have no idea. I have no idea if I'm a full stack developer or not. So it's just like, I don't know what I'm doing, but I really love doing it. So it doesn't matter. Like, I don't need the label to do the kind of work that I'm doing. I will just continue to build stuff. I will just continue to learn whenever possible and get new technology, new languages, and do different stuff than the stuff that I'm used to. Because that's how I think that I'm going to progress in my career, and I'm going to progress as a developer. That's what I think is really important for the kind of stuff that we're doing, and that's what's going to provide the best outcome for the company. So that's just like continuing to learn and continuing to do the job and make sure that I'm giving my best to the team and everyone that relies on the kind of stuff that we're building. And that's it. Questions? So he asked first.
So a couple slides ago, you had this scenario where you were on an ASP.NET app and you jumped over to porting it to Rails, and you said
Yes.
you were a little apprehensive maybe about learning the new code, but the team was supportive, right?
Yeah.
So what I've seen is more common, and I'm curious your advice here, is the opposite, where the developers would love to move on to the newer technologies, but the management team would much rather say, do it over in ASP.NET because we already know that, and there's less risk, and we can maybe deliver it a little bit faster.
Okay, so in this case, like it was kind of nice because the cost of running the old ASP.NET infrastructure on EC2 was 12 times higher than the costs we're paying now to run it on Rails. Due to the Windows licenses, it was running on MS SQL Server, which is really much more expensive to run due to the licenses again. So what we did, like we came to the company and they wanted to build a lot of new features in this app. This was an app that was kind of left behind. It was like they bought another company that came with this app and they left the app in there, and one day they just woke up and they're like, oh, we want to build all of these cool features in this app. And when we started looking at the app, like it was using the database as a queue. So like it's like, well, database 101, you don't want to use your database as a queue. Databases are not supposed to be used as a queue. So it did not scale. It was a really old code base. It wasn't using ASP.NET MVC. So the cost of running it was really high. So we came in with, everyone was like, okay, so we do have people that could like work on this app. Like I could work on the app myself, but we showed them, so this is the cost of running the app. This is the complications that we have right now, and this is how much it's going to take us to actually fix all of the issues. So we will have to basically write the app again. So do you guys want to stay with this kind of environment, this kind of platform, pay the price for the platform, or do you want us to rewrite it again? So in this case, we had a pretty strong case not to continue down the path. But like if you can't really make a case, it's hard. Unless like you come to them and it's like, okay, so if you don't do it, the whole team is going to quit. Because basically when you're going to make a decision like this, which was like people were like, oh, so you're going to do it in Rails, and we have like huge Rails app inside the company, and it gives us a lot of trouble because like it's a monolith, it has a lot of dependencies, it wasn't made like in an ideal way, and people were like, so we have a problem with Rails, why are you still going to like for Rails on this? I was like, because it's a small app, it's much simpler, it's not like going to require a lot of the scaling issues, and for the kind of stuff that it's doing, it's probably going it's easy for this application to grow the way it is right now, even if it's running in Rails. And running it in Rails made it really fast to build, and it was also like something that a lot of other people in the team knew. So they could like do support for the Rails app as well. So it was much easier for me to just come to them and say, yeah, this is like our decision. So if you don't have any like strong points to sell to management, it's hard to make something like this. So what I've seen happen is that someone just goes like in a skunkworks project, builds something in a new technology, and just comes in and, hey, look at this. It's like 10 times faster than the solution that we have right now. We should look at this. And then like people are just, oh, so there's something in here, and then they go in that direction. So I've did this myself, and it did work. So maybe it could work for you guys as well.
Right, so something you had mentioned earlier about the lack of understanding about consuming your code, something that I would suggest, actually two things. The first is to have tests for your application. And I don't just mean the individual parts, I mean everything from the actual libraries that you're writing to the part that is consumed by your front end. And secondly, I would say to consider writing things as composable parts, small tools that do one thing well, microservices, libraries as much as you can, and then using those libraries in the actual application, because this will not only provide a system that is more flexible, more easily refactorable, but it will also give you the benefit of first-hand usage of what the code you're writing is, how it is to use it, what the front-end people or whatever downstream consumers you're going to have, what their experience is going to be like when you're writing tests for it, when you're actually writing the when you're writing the code that consumes the APIs, then you're going to have that experience yourself. You're going to have the knowledge of, oh, this endpoint is a little frustrating. I hate that I have to wrap this data into this structure. Why do I have to do that? Or I hate that I need to convert this to JSON. Or I don't know why you'd hate that, but anyway. And another thing that I wanted to mention is that it has been a core belief of mine since I saw it on a mailing list post on the Illumos list about 2 years ago that that empathy is a core engineering value. Not just for software, but for any kind of engineering, because at the end of the day, you're doing this for someone to consume.
Yeah.
And that is, at its core, an act of empathy. To do something for someone else, you need to have empathy. You need to understand where they're going.
Yeah.
So that's, core value to me.
Yeah, it's definitely really important. So do we have other questions? Oh, just go for it.
I'm curious that you mentioned nothing about analysis or design. It seems like you've got developers and operations guys in some kind of vacuum the way you presented it.
Oh, okay. I don't think there's a separation between actually building the app and making analysis. I think like it's all part of whatever you're doing. If you're a developer and you're going to build a database and you're going to scale, you have to understand how the decisions you're making, like using a database, and you're building a database and you're writing everyone inside a single database in a single table. So if you're making something like this, you should understand that this is not going to scale. You have to make sure that you can separate the data. The data could live, like customer data could live in different databases, and your application is capable of handling this kind of stuff. So I don't think there's going to be a separation between making the analysis of what you're doing and actually building the code. It's all part of your job. Like your job has to be like there's no one else that's above you that's making the decision, because you are the one that's writing the code. So you have to understand that whatever you write is going to be what's running out there. So you have to understand the results of all the decisions that you're making. So it's all together.
Thank you.
So
Yeah, I just kind of similar to that, but what level of importance do you put on the security aspect of development? Like, do you see that being rolled into the full stack label?
it is. I think this is also part of if you're building, you have to understand, and I'm coming, like, most of my time was building either like backend applications or building Rails front ends for stuff that's happening, and a lot of the stuff that you're doing with Rails, there's a lot of protection against what you're doing. There's a lot of libraries. You could use Brakeman or any of the other libraries that are going to check your code and are going to see if the endpoints that you have are reliable and safe to work. But if you're not running in an environment like this, you have to pay a lot of attention to how you're ingesting the data, how you're sending this data like out of the application, and there's going to be a lot of tools that are just going to help you handle this kind of stuff. So this is like really important, and we run most of our stuff on EC2. So we still have applications that use like a security key that has a lot of access when it shouldn't, but all of the new applications that we have deployed over, I don't know, over the past 2 years, they run on YAML. And they only have access to the very specific services that they require. And even if someone gets into one of the servers, they break in and they access one of those servers, the keys that are available in there are only valid for 15 minutes, and we can just invalidate the role itself, and the machines just become like, they're just not usable anymore. So we do like think that this is important for everyone to know. The ops team needs to understand that security is important, and the developers need to understand as well, because it's useless for you to make sure that all your machines are hardened and they are safe and they're secure, and if the developers are just like getting the string from a user and running it on the server. Like, you can't fix something like this. So developers need to understand that this is also something that's important.
So one thing I've heard is say full stack developers are a way for companies to hire 2 positions with the 1 salary. Would you agree with that, or?
If you're really a full stack developer, your salary is pretty high. Most of the time, if a company is hiring for a full stack developer, you can ask for a higher salary because of the kind of stuff that you know and the kind of stuff that you're bringing to the company. So as much as people are going to say, oh, you're hiring for 2 different positions and someone is going to do all the work, but you work like from 9 to 5. It's not magic. That's the time you have to do your work, and there's no reason for you to just go crazy and overwork yourself just because the company supposedly hired you for 2 positions. So if you're joining a company and you're joining as a full stack developer because you're going like to work on backend, to work on frontend, to work on ops and help them do this kind of stuff, you're probably being hired for a senior position, because if you're doing this kind of stuff, you have been in the market for a while. Like it's hard to believe that someone that's leaving college is going to get into a company in a full stack developer position, unless it's a startup, which is great. Like if you're like right out of college and you get into a startup that doesn't have a lot of people, you will just have to do a lot of different roles. And like for me, this experience was really good because I got to do a lot of different stuff in the company, and I had some guidance, and it helped me to like do a lot of different stuff that I would not have done if I had just gone to a common company where I would have like a very specific set of work. But I was like a recent graduate, so I couldn't really ask for anything other than that. So I don't think, like, as much as people are going to say, oh, they're going to underpay you for the kind of stuff that you're doing, I don't think that's really true in the market. In the market, and like if you open your LinkedIn for messages, it's insane. Like it's impossible to answer like all the noise and all this crazy stuff that happens in there. So our market is really hot right now. And if you are a full stack developer and you can pull your weight and do your stuff, you're pretty much going to get like a higher salary than most other people that are like working on specific fields.
A question: how do you feel you get over the stigma of being just a front-end developer versus just being a back-end developer? Like, how do you, like, because it's kind of, years ago you get more of that stigma. Okay, you can only do front-end. You had only ability experience doing front-end. Back and forth versus vertical.
Yeah, I guess this is going to depend on your team. Like whenever I look at this guy doing the work, I'm like, man, I could not do this kind of stuff because it's hard. It's hard stuff. Doing front-end stuff, it's not easy. And as much as like I'm doing like my stuff in the back end, when I look at the stuff that people are doing in the front end, the kind of JavaScript they're building and the kind of solutions they're building, I just look like it's amazing. And it's hard work for them as much as it is hard work for me. So if people out there still feel like if you're doing front-end development, you're not as good as a back-end guy, go and try doing front-end development. And then you see if it's really easy or not, because it's not. It's hard, it's complicated, and it requires a completely different set of skills. Because first you have to really know JavaScript, you have to know one of the frameworks, and you have to know how users are going to interact with your app. And if you get a backend developer and you get him to build a UI, it's going to be horrifying. Because they have no idea what they are doing. You know, they're just going to put like a lot of form fields one below the other, and they're going to call it, this is an app. You know, so like it's hard work, and we just have to show people that the kind of work that's being done, like in front-end development and UI development, is really important. And if you don't think it is, give it a try and do it better. That's my default answer. Like if you don't think like something is hard enough, go there and do it yourself. Isn't it easy? Then prove it. You know, you just have to prove it.
I think the important thing is the perceived lack of difficulty on front-end development.
I think the perceived lack of difficulty with front-end development is not necessarily per se that it is not difficult, but rather that it is difficult in a way that the back-end developer may not necessarily be either aware of or be looking for.
Yeah.
And I say this as a back-end developer myself.
Yeah. Like if you ask me to build a UI, like it's going to be awful. Like it's just going to be awful because I don't know how to do it. Like I can't fake it. It's just going to be awful. And I'm really happy to work with people that understand this kind of stuff and can do it themselves, because that's just not something that I know how to do. And that's just life. Like you can't possibly know everything, and you have to work with people that know more than you and that can provide good stuff and do the job as well. That's why we work in teams and not like all by ourselves. So anyone else?
You talk about learning tools like Chef and React. So how do you recommend people learn them?
Okay, so for me, I went through the documentation and I asked people. Like I had people to ask, and I could just bug them. I could just come in and say, this is not working, can you tell me why? And they would help me, and they just got me to a point where I could just fix stuff myself. So I guess at the beginning, you will need guidance. You will need someone to hold your hand, because it's just going to make it faster. Because if you're like always banging your head against the wall for every single small issue, you're not going to move forward. Like you need someone at your side when something breaks that you can just say, hey, can you help? Can you sit with me? Can you show me why this is not working? Can you explain to me why this is broken? So I think like you're going to need this kind of stuff. You're going to need like someone to hold your hand for a little while until you move forward. But for me, this was the best way to learn. Having someone that I could ask and having an actual like application to work on. It wasn't like I wasn't just playing around with the technology. I had to build something, so I had a goal in mind, and I could ask people for help when I couldn't like move forward.
So you have to get into arguments on Stack Overflow.
Yeah, that would work as well. That would work as well. Yeah.
I think you can also try GitHub, because a lot of projects that you can from GitHub, you just go with a search for a project and find one project.
Yeah.
Then you can use it as a framework or a scalable.
Yeah.
I got one more. All right, so let's say you're a super C++ architect, right? And now you're looking at going into full stack mode, and you're saying, I'm going to learn some React, I'm going to learn some MongoDB, whatever. But now it comes time to get kind of a role in those new technologies, right? You're going from being, architect level C++, now you're going to a new company to do front ends and whatnot. Does that mean you jump down to being like the junior dev level? Or how do you manage that kind of transition for your experience and maybe also your wallet?
If you can convince the company to pay you the same salary, that would be amazing. And right now, I think, especially with the way the market is, there's a lot of companies that are going to hire because you can do the work. It's not because like you know all the different frameworks and all the different technologies. You just have proven that I have this years of experience building different applications and doing different stuff. So I have proven that I can actually do it. So like if you are able to show that yes, I can do stuff, I can build applications, and I can do it like using different tools, then yes, like let's hire you, let's train you, and let's get you like rolling. Because imagine that you're going right now to work at a company like Amazon. No one knows what Amazon uses. Like no one knows. Like what could possibly be running out there? Like they have Java, they have C++, they have Python, they have Rails. There's a lot of different stuff running on Amazon. So how are they going to hire one developer? Are they going to hire a developer that knows all the different pieces? No, they want to hire someone that's good. And when you get inside the company, then you're going to be sent to a team, and then you're going to learn whatever kind of technology the team is working on. Because it's going to be different applications, and as much as you know, like technology, like as much as like I know Rails, if I go to a new company right now, to a new Rails application, there's going to be a lot of stuff for me to learn. Because they have their own way of building, they have their own model, they have their own structure, so it's not like you can't just jump from one technology to the other just because you know the basics. So companies are not going to hire you only for what you know, but like for the potential that you know. Like if you're really good at C++, it means that if you jump to another language, you're going to carry a lot of this experience that you have to the new language that you have. So this is usually what's just going to happen.
Yeah, I would recommend also doing what the first lady said. Just get me through the door.
Yeah. Yeah.
If you're good, you'll get there.
I just want to add on what Maurício said about how you learn something new, because I've been observing him kind of as he's been here for 3 years. Like you really have to have someone on your team who knows more than you. Like you can't learn from Stack Overflow, you can't learn from Hacker News, you can't learn from Blockpost. You have to have someone there who really cares about what they're doing and likes that you're actually trying to learn what they're doing. There's no substitute. You really have to have like a native speaker, so to speak, a chef of Ruby, of DevOps, of AWS. So, but he's done a really good job.
I would add to that. So where I was, there was nobody to lead me. So what I did to find that. So I agree that you need a guy to, someone to help you with it. If you don't have it in-house, first off, yes, take a job if you can get it, no matter what it is, even if it's down. And that is ultimately what I did. But when I went up, so the company I'm at now, I hired up because I know other pieces of what they do. So they're happy to give me the level on that, knowing that the newer things I can learn. To the company that the last company I was at was called JetPay. And that was where I did it, where I was supporting older applications, migrating to new. And then the way I learned the new to find that person is to find user groups, to go to training sessions, to anybody I could. And then once you meet people, they'll be happy to answer questions, usually. People will contact you and say, here, if you have a question, give me a call. Send an email, whatever, and I would. So that's how I did it.
Yeah, I would say it's like a circle.
Yeah.
When you're outside, it's very difficult to penetrate. Because everybody in the circle thinks it's freaking genius. And also, when they interview people, says, how the hell, I bet you've interviewed most of the people in the circle, they will not get the job. Okay? But once you are in, you're also one of the geniuses. So you can
That's it, I guess.
All right. Thanks, Maurício. Round of
Yeah.
applause.